To me, land is the elephant in many rooms. It's a lucrative business which many people want to hide from the public eye. So, exposing issues such as these, for me, constitutes the only way for genuine development. Free press and development are intrinsically linked. Without it, one cannot gauge genuine development in any kind of sector. And if development benefits a select few, can it really be considered as such? On that questioning note, I would like to simply open the floor to the public. I hope it's possible that you can hear us from the audience, or alternatively you could come up here, of course. But again, you know, we really wanted this launch to be short and sweet, more so that we could hear from you and get more feedback from the public rather than us simply speaking to you. So can I get a few hands or comments or questions? Perhaps you could present your name and...
Michael Meyer with the Graduate School of Media Communications at the time. In the case where you have PIU officers beating up a policeman, you have it on video, Citizen TV, any lawsuits?
Yeah, so far none. I mean, this is the question that...
Why don't criminals sue? Why doesn't Citizen TV go to court? I mean, that's a good way to force action.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your role in that? Why are you going to the media house and advocating that they sue, pointing out when people arrested?
No, that's a good question. And I think, you know, one of the problems that the Kenyan press faces and the Kenyan associations face is a lack of solidarity among us to you know, bring power to these issues. But I can say that CPJ now is working closely with the union, the Kenyan Correspondents Association, the Media Council, and we're trying to devise joint solutions to actually, in a word, fight back against cases like this and actually bring people to court. So it's a work in progress, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if we had a stronger solidarity within the press corps itself, perhaps such incidents wouldn't take place so frequently. Yeah. I'm sorry? Say it again?
Sorry, Hillary Taylor with Voice of America. Kind of a related question, but in terms of the legislation that was passed or pending recently, restricting the press, has there been any backlash at all from the media houses themselves or any reaction to that?
To the press laws that were passed this year? Certainly, I mean, the press houses have been quite active in challenging these laws, and of course that's why many of them are held up in court. You know, I mean, the thing is, even though these laws have not been enacted and they don't directly affect the media houses, it still sets a very sort of fearful picture for any journalist or media house, knowing that that law could have been passed and is still potentially passable. You know, it's not something that we've engaged in particular, but I think it certainly has contributed to certain amounts of self-censorship. Do you guys want to answer questions? Yeah. Ah, great. Okay. Ah, thanks.
Koki Ocheng from USIU. I'm really interested in understanding why you feel that statutory regulations from Media Council should be kind of put aside. Is there really press freedom without some regulation? And I also heard that you know, journalism is a trade, from what I've heard, not exactly a profession. So could you expound on that?
Would you like to? Yeah.
I think it's because we believe that it can be used to limit who can practice as a journalist, and then can be used to limit the right to freedom of expression, which is a fundamental human right. And journalists exercise that fundamental human right. And so to have laws which say, you behave badly, therefore you may not practice as a journalist, is to remove somebody's right to freedom of expression. And I know that there's always a concern about irresponsible journalists and so on, but there are sanctions that can be made. If you overstep the mark, you defame people, you can be taken to court in a civil suit. So I think that, and there are codes of conduct that we want people to discuss, but where it's a law, it's all too easy that that law can be used and abused to restrict the right to freedom of expression. I'm reducing it to that very basic right, but that's actually where it all stems from. I don't know if, Joel, if you want to add a comment. It's an issue that the whole issue of criminal defamation touches on as well, and that's why we oppose criminal defamation, where the state gets involved and says who may practice as a journalist and who may not. You want to
the only thing I would mention is there is some international legal precedent on this issue. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights, which applies to the Americas, actually looked at this issue of compulsory licensing and determined that the licensing of journalists violates the basic fundamental right, as Sue defined it, of all people to express themselves through the media. And so they viewed this as a restriction on freedom of expression. That only applies to Latin America, or to the Americas, but it created a global precedent. So that is our view. We have seen this abused. It sounds, in many instances, like a reasonable idea, but once you have licensing, it's very easy for the government to come in and say, aha, you get a license, you don't get a license, to co-opt that process. And so that's the concern, and that's why it's generally, we do not consider it best practice. Since I'm up here, I can, if there are any more questions, there's one here. I think there's a microphone. Yeah, the mic's coming down. And if I could just ask you to...
Well, now that I have the mic, could I go on?
The power of the mic.
I go on?
Go ahead, and then we'll take a question from you.
Okay. My name is William Olojana from the Kenya Correspondents Association. I think we need to thank CPJ for the report, because certainly we have a vacuum, even in Kenya, in terms of generating reports. So while we are talking about, CPJ is talking about 19 cases.
That we've been able to document. That doesn't mean there are more.
Yeah, since May. Since May, yeah? Since January to May? Yeah. Certainly, I think you know, this gathering needs to know that we have more than 20 cases. So we, when the next report is being done, then certainly it will be more. Well, I mean, of course, this was done earlier on, and we are working very closely with the CPJ. We just need to say that in this country, the space is shrinking, and you know, the murders, the what, and that kind of thing. And in terms of the response to, I think there was the case of, you know, what are the media organizations doing in terms of dealing with the, you know, the space? The media organizations have gone to court. Many of you could be aware that the Kenya Correspondents Association, the Kenya Union of Journalists, and the Editors Guild, we challenged the two media laws. They remain in court. That was 2014. And we cannot ask the court to speed up the case, but we hope that it will be concluded, because unless that is done, then the regulatory environment is collapsing, basically. The Media Council is not working at its optimum. The Communications Authority, which rebranded from CCK.
Sorry, do you have a question, or?
No, I'm just making a comment regarding that. I mean, just to clarify some of the issues that I had arise. So essentially, I think we need to do more. And I agree with what Tom said about fragmentation. We need to do more ourselves. Sometimes we meet only here when you know, CPJ or somebody else calls us. So it's important for the media in Kenya and the media stakeholders to create their own space and do more in terms of advocacy.
Thank you. Let's take one more question in the front, and then what we'll do is we will stay around as long as we have coffee and tea, and we'll stay around as long as everyone would like and answer additional questions. So why don't we make this the last question, if that's okay?
Thank you very much. My name is Gitabu Imanyara. I'm a lawyer, sometimes journalist, and former politician. First, let me say it's a pleasure to see CPJ here in Nairobi. You've chosen a very good time to come just before your president gets here, and therefore the attention is rightly on Kenya. I came in late, so I didn't get all the comments you made, But one of the things that intrigues me most is the rise of the citizen media. You know, the bloggers, the SMSs that really do carry the news long before the main media houses carry it. What is the role? How do you recognize the citizen media? Secondly, as a lawyer, and I've been involved in a number of cases where I'm acting for a number of journalists, including Jeff Koinange and Tony Gachoka, we've seen increased use of defamation laws to silence critics. Just yesterday, I believe, Wahome Duku of the Standard was arrested at the instigation of a senior politician, a senator, here on a criminal defamation allegation. Even during the darkest days of Moi administration, we didn't have criminal defamation targeting journalists. So despite the new constitution with the promise of real freedom for the press, I am seeing a slide back towards the pre-Section 2A days. And my question is, what can the international community, in solidarity with the Kenyan institutions, who are themselves under threat, and the threat takes many forms. It could be an invitation to State House for breakfast, it could be a visit to your house, or it could be disappearance, as a number of journalists have. What measures do you take to protect these people, particularly the citizen journalists who are really at the front line these days of informing the public of the goings-on, particularly against corruption?
Okay, yeah, I'll answer that, and then I'll let Tom, I'm sure you have something that you want to contribute as well. So, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. When we look at the global media environment, we have to understand that it includes citizen journalists, it includes people who are informally occupy the information space, whether they be activists or advocates of some sort, and they, along with journalists, contribute to the sharing of information, of news, the sharing of news and information, both at a national and global level. And we have to, as journalists, recognize their role and protect their rights. So I think you're absolutely right in seeing this broad picture. In terms of what the international community can do to ensure that this issue is addressed in a Kenyan context, we realize, of course, Kenya's pivotal role, and Kenya is at the kind of the epicenter of these debates. President Obama is on his way here. That's going to highlight this issue globally, and it's and that's why we've done this report. We want to make sure that this issue is part of, as Kenya occupies its space on the global stage, we want to make sure that this issue of the media environment, the information environment in this country, is part of that discussion. One of our recommendations, and I think this is very important, given the level of concern and anxiety, we think that it would be very prudent and productive for President Kenyatta to make a major speech or presentation talking and reaffirming his country and his government's commitment to freedom of expression and freedom of the press. Because there's a lot of anxiety that we've seen in compiling this report across a variety of sectors, from citizen journalists to media houses. So making sure that we're going to formally present our recommendations, but getting that kind of commitment and engagement for the government is crucial. Tom, you want to?
Oh, can I ask a question?
Then you can ask a question.
Yes, a quick question.
Okay, yeah, let me just, I'm just so pleased to see Mr. Manyara here. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your publication. It's excellent. No, just to add to what Joel was saying at the national level, you're absolutely right. Citizen journalists and bloggers are increasingly under threat, and I hope some of my friends from BAKER here, the Bloggers Association of Kenya, who are doing a very good job of highlighting some of these cases. I mean, as you say, just yesterday, Wahome was arrested for his comments on Facebook. Earlier this year, we had a student arrested for criticizing the governor of Meru on her Facebook page. She made 5 posts. One was about the lack of water at the hospital, and then she found herself in jail for the weekend. So it's getting bad, and I think, what can we do about it? It's tough. I mean, part of it is expose these cases more and recognize them as journalists as much as we can. But there's also stuff we can do at the micro level. I mean, I'm here in Kenya. There was a guy arrested for taking photos around Galleria, so I ran to the Langata police station and talked a lot and managed to get him out. You know, so there are different approaches that we can do to help our colleagues in the social media realm, but we really need to recognize that. And again, your second point is also very important, and I think it's highlighted in our report, is that the challenges and threats that journalists face now are different from than what they were facing, say, during the Moi era. You know, the challenges were clear, and there was a certain amount of solidarity among the Kenyan press to face those challenges. These days, people work in a vacuum. They don't know whom to trust, and the attacks on the press are far more subtle, as you were saying. You know, invited to a dinner, cajoled into certain events, which can induce self-censorship, etc. And I think, you know, it's not a very good solution, but I think that the only thing we really can do is try our best to expose these things and point them out as a problem. Otherwise, they'll simply continue to permeate. Now that I've blathered, I'd love to hear from Eric Chinje.
Thanks, Eric Chinje from the African Media Initiative. No, Tom, I was just going through this very quickly and trying to look at the flip side of this and wondering if there are if you've given any thoughts to how we can engage the other side, how we can get, you know, because this is the reality of the terrain, you know. The politicians have come into media, the business folks have come into media, everyone is, you know, is a media player, and it's kind of hard to sort through the confusion. And I was just wondering whether CPJ, which does a fantastic job with exposing the problems when they exist, have given thought to how we can engage these people who are all over us, the businessmen, the politicians, and others.
Do you want to? Take a shot? Okay.
And then I really do want to encourage the discussion to take place over coffee so that we can do this informally, because that's a very thought-provoking issue. I mean, this is a problem at a global level. I mean, this is certainly not unique to Kenya. This is a problem everywhere in terms of many individuals or corporations who are media owners don't really view media as a public trust. And it's always had this kind of a dual role. Yeah, it's a business, but it's also a public trust. It serves the public. And that has created, in many circumstances, a sense of responsibility towards the public. And I think that really is a kind of antiquated notion. People enter media for a variety of reasons. In many instances, one of the problems is it's not necessarily a good business. It's not generating huge amounts of revenue directly. So some people enter media because they want to advance their commercial interests. And use the media to do that, or they want to advance their political interests. So this is really a very challenging issue, and the one thing we have to recognize is what's happening is, because in these instances where this happens and people lose trust in the media, the institutional media, they often turn to social media. They often find new outlets and new venues for communicating, for sharing information, for sharing news. And this has some advantages in that it offers an alternative, but it has some disadvantages in that this kind of media does not have the institutional strength which allows it to stand up to government pressure. So I think that, you know, our role, and this is a role that CPJ plays globally, it's very difficult to do this at a national level, is this kind of convening authority to get people in the room from these sectors to talk and to make sure that the public interest is served in this media environment, to make sure the government understands its responsibility, media owners understand their responsibility, social media users understand their role, and to try and not address this at the level of, you know, engagement with one individual media owner, one individual media house, but in the context of the broad environment. So I wish I had an easy answer for you. I don't. All I will say is this is not a problem that's unique to Kenya. It's global, and these challenges are being dealt with at a global level and at a national level around the world. Does anyone else want to add to that? Or?
I mean, I think it really is the need to have those conversations and to bring people together and to start thrashing it out, and for the media not to be backing down from the importance of freedom and the right to ask questions and to be robust in expressing opinions, and to talk about its role in society, that it's, you know, to build that understanding and respect for this, because it is a fundamental right and it's an essential element, I think, to the flow of information through a society. And so I think the utilitarian argument, as well as the need for building common understanding, and then the rights-based argument. And I just wanted to make one comment around the criminal defamation issue, which you raised, which there are two precedents around this issue which have been raised here in Africa. The Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression at the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, Panti Glakula, has made this a particular campaign of hers to ask African governments to get rid of criminal defamation from their statute books. The Pan-African Parliament has endorsed that call. So there's precedent, and I think we need to, whatever we may think about some of these institutions and how effective they are, it is there, and I think we need to be pushing individual national governments to comply with this. There was also a court case against that the African court ruled that jail terms were inappropriate for anybody convicted of criminal defamation. They held back from actually condemning it outright, but certainly said that anybody to be sent in jail, and that's a legal precedent from the court in the case of a Burkina Faso journalist. So there's a growing precedent, and there's a call here, led by African institutions, and I think that we need to support those calls and make sure that information is shared. And the last point is that you are the media. You have the means to raise these issues and to put it into the public agenda. And I would encourage you to use the opportunity that you have at your disposal at the end of your keyboard, at the other end of your camera or microphone, to actually raise these issues. And CPJ is there to kind of back you up in whatever way we can in terms of protecting your rights to work as journalists. And I think on that note, the tea will be coming out in a second, and coffee and something to nibble on. And we're available to talk as long as you care to hang around. And thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
There you have it, the CPJ